any change to genetic information constitutes new information.
Well, then we'd have to discuss what is new information, at least what it looks like, or what it would look like.
Yeah, information is purposeful and functional. It causes purposeful and functional things.
So you can't have a duplicated gene that is then modified to have a new function? Is that impossible?
I don't think anybody has observed such thing as a new function arise by a mutation.
What about a modified function?
That's modification of existing information, and it's typically degradatory.
Well, that's primarily how evolution works, by descent with modification.
What's the evidence of that? Scientific evidence for that?
For mutations?
That mutation causes structural design change over time in creatures. If it's not a philosophy, if it's not just your philosophy and it's scientific, then what's the scientific evidence for it?
Okay, so just how it is possible to get, for example, different varieties of brassica, broccoli, kale, and all that from a wild mustard by means of descent with modification. Yeah.
Okay, so there's morphological differences between plants. This has been known for a long time. What's anatomically different about the broccoli?
But that's a change in anatomy. It's the same thing.
How is it changed in anatomy? What new anatomical feature arises in the broccoli?
You have in the broccoli, you have the flowers are clustered together to form like a bulb. So that's a new.
Okay, so it has a differently shaped bulb, but it's still a bulb. The same tissues in the same place. They are pressed together in a different shape. They develop as a different shape. It's the same tissues in the same location of the same body plan. What's the evidence for a new anatomical feature?
Same location, though.
Well, sure. It's at the end of the stems. It's not on. It's not in the root system. You know, that's the same location of the body plan of the plant.
You have tulips that have the modified root system.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of evidence for changes in cauliflower, too. Cauliflower does the same thing broccoli can do. It can grow in some pretty weird-looking shapes. But where's the evidence of anatomical difference? There's no anatomical feature arising there in the broccoli or in the cauliflower.
Drawing that line arbitrarily.
No, I'm not. It's claimed that evolutionists often claim that changes to shape constitutes an anatomical change, but it does not.
Yeah, I'm not understanding the question really, because as I was describing, evolution is descent with modification. So every new trait is just a modification of an existing trait.
So that's every philosophy, but then you need to back it up with science and show that mechanism actually happens.
I just did. I just showed you the example.
I explained to you that's morphological, not anatomical.
Okay, so if you want to take it on a macro scale, for example, to get from a hand to a wing, you just need to modify the hand. It's the same thing.
You're welcome to believe that, but what's the scientific evidence for that?
I mean, well, you have, for example, you have the transition from theropods to birds that shows the...
Can you explain those, please? Can you name one?
You want to name a transitional form?
A transitional form to birds.
Okay, so Archaeopteryx would be the primary transitional form.
Evolutionists themselves now acknowledge Archaeopteryx is not a transitional form to birds. Try again. Try again.
Who said that?
No, I can tell you what they actually say about it.
Yeah, they do say that. I'll provide you the evidence in just a moment.
I would love...
No, they say it's likely not a direct ancestor, but it represents the type of form that you would see.
Right, so
the transition, and that's how they found it.
Right. So they're admitting it's not a transitional form. You just stated it. There you go.
No. Transitional form.
Yeah.
No, you're twisting the words.
And emotion go at it, so it's one-on-one.
No, you just acknowledge, Taylor, that they don't believe that it's a transitional form in the evolution of birds anymore.
That's wrong.
No, you just admitted it.
Regardless of what lineage it's in.
No, you just admitted that it's not a part of the transition
No.
from theropod dinosaurs to birds.
Yeah,
No,
but that doesn't
no.
mean it's not a transitional fossil.
Well, you're welcome to believe that, but evolutionist scientists no longer state that Archaeopteryx is a transition of birds.
No,
Yeah, because
a
evolution branches. Sorry, go ahead.
Regardless, they acknowledge that example has been refuted.
No, a transitional form need not be the direct ancestor to its descendant form. But what it represents then. It doesn't have to be the direct ancestor. Like Tiktaalik, for example, is not the direct ancestor of modern tetrapods, but it's a transitional form.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have a bit of an accent. I'm from the Caribbean. I was saying that a transitional form is not the same as an ancestral form. Transitional form is to show a change in features, to show that a change in features has occurred.
Okay, so you're welcome to believe it's an ancestral form, but it's not considered a transitional form anymore.
No, I'm not saying it's an ancestral form. I'm saying it is a transitional form. It is not. Archaeopteryx is definitely not the direct ancestors of birds because there were birds before.
That's the point. Then it's not a transitional form to birds.
No, it's still a transitional form.
You're welcome to believe that, but the evolutionists acknowledge that it's not a transitional form to birds. Okay.
No, they you just said that they said
that they do.
They acknowledge it's from dinosaurs.
They acknowledge they might believe that. You know.
But definitely not ancestral.
But it has bird features, and that's all it has. You're welcome to believe it's
dinosaur
something
with bird features. Right.
You're welcome to believe that. Okay. So I mean, if we examine the fossil record and all you've got is Archaeopteryx, and that supports your whole evolution theory, it's failed.
No, I mean
it's a bird.
Into the forms now, I can't name it for you.
Even the world's foremost expert on birds, Alan Fiducia, acknowledges Archaeopteryx is no transitional form at all.
Right. So
we
is the minority. The consensus is that it is a transitional form. It was always
good luck trying to show that it's a transitional form. They believe it's a transitional form simply because it has what is believed to be a spiny tail and teeth. But there are birds with teeth today. All the other features of the animal is strictly bird. It has bird features. It has bird feet. It has a curved breastbone. It has hollow bones. It has a beak. It has feathers. And the difference is it has teeth. There are birds that live on this planet right now that have teeth. So you can't say that's okay.
There are no
and it has a spiny.
Predicted by evolution.
And it has a spiny tail. So
there are no extant birds now with teeth. No.
There are plenty of unique creatures that God made. That doesn't show that they're transitional. This creature might have been unique in that it had a spiny tail, spiny tail birds are now extinct. But that doesn't by itself evidence evolution.
Okay, so now by itself, in isolation, it would not be evidence for evolution. But remember, it was predicted by the theory.
Good, thank you. I'm glad you acknowledge that.
The theory would be true that, for example, birds descended from reptilian forms. At least that's what Darwin said, but now we know it's dinosaurs. But if it descended from reptilian forms, then we should find birds with more reptilian-like features. So like the teeth and the long tail and the lack of the beak, and instead of the they don't have a beak, they have like a reptilian.
If evolution were true, there should be a plethora of transitional forms between theropod dinosaurs and birds.
Right, and that's the same thing Snake was trying to explain to you.
There aren't any.
There are.
The reason why we don't see
show them.
All right. Go ahead. I'm pulling it up.
Okay, so the journal Nature has published the Essionopteryx, however, is not the first discovery that shed status on Archaeopteryx. 2011, the journal Nature published discovery of another chicken-sized dinosaur named Zyotingia, and had earlier had earlier undetermined the first bird status of Archaeopteryx. In other words, Archaeopteryx is not a first bird.
Correct.
It is fully a bird, okay? And it's
Right.
not considered the first bird. So it's not transitional form to birds. It is a bird, okay?
Okay. So
Not a
you are
transition.
correct. Archaeopteryx is definitely not the first bird, and is definitely not the direct ancestor to birds. No one is saying that.
Excellent.
That's not the meaning of a transitional form.
It is a bird.
Form is a species or a taxa or whatever that would show the transition from one state to another, from one kind or whatever.
Well, you're welcome to believe that, but evolutionists acknowledge it's not transitional to birds.
No, it's not ancestral. It's not.
They say it's not transitional to birds either.
It is a transitional form. It's just not ancestral.
Well,
it's
you're
not
welcome to believe that, but all I'm pointing out is they say it's not a transitional form to birds. So it doesn't help the evolutionist case that there's transitional forms to birds in the fossil record. You have to start with something else. You can't use Archaeopteryx. The evolutionists admit it's not. It's fully bird.
Who said that? Who said that?
I
Fiducia?
just quoted you a paper in the journal Nature.
Archaeopteryx. That is true.
Okay. The British Museum of Natural History in 1979 acknowledged it. Okay, so Alan Fiducia, the world's foremost ornithopterist, whatever the name bird expert is, I've forgotten, ornithologist, he says the same thing. Let me find you some more statements. And
is this a consensus, by the way, or is just is this a consensus now?
Pascal Godefort of the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Science agrees. I'm just looking at some of my sources. Okay. So.
But you're missing the point, Neff, which is that
no,
since they occupy these transitions, can I finish? Since they occupy these transitions where they have features of both, that shows that the phenotypic plasticity overlaps between all of these creatures.
Okay, so you're welcome to believe that there are transitions, but Archaeopteryx is not one.
What did I just say?
You're trying to use phenotypic plasticity as a mechanism for evolution, but you never answered my question. You said genetic mutation does it also. And so I asked you, what is the scientific evidence that genetic mutation designs new structural designs in the anatomy of living things? You have not answered that question. Are you going to answer it, or are you going to tell me that you don't know the scientific evidence that verifies that?
Because mutations cause differences in the regulation of the genetic material.
That's true.
Mutations in the instruction of the genetic material.
That can happen. So now, what's the scientific evidence that mutations cause changes to anatomy?
I find it strange that I've given you an example of this, and
you gave me Archaeopteryx.
Because
it's not an example.
Hold on,
of transitional form to bird.
Because the anatomy genes can change. Do you understand this?
Oh, they can change, right? So now, what's the scientific evidence that mutation changes anatomy?
So you're asking for like a specific one.
See, we know that mutations can change genes. You're not giving me the evidence that mutations cause structural evolutionary change.
I'm giving you the mechanism.
Well, that's what you believe is the mechanism. Now we want scientific verification of your belief.
Yeah, we know mutations happen.
No, you know in your imagination. We know in scientific evidence, Taylor. If evolution is not a philosophy, as I state, and so many creationists do, and it's actually science, then don't give me a philosophical idea and call it science.
So mutations do not happen in anatomical genes? Is that what you're saying?
Mutations do occur in all kinds of genes. Now, what's the evidence that mutations occurring to genes create new anatomical features? I understand you believe that. But what you believe and what's actually true might be two different things.
Because once you have a muscle gene, you can place a muscle, or once you have a bone, you can place multiple bones in different locations. And all you have to do is tweak that information a little bit.
I can build all kinds of things with my Lego set. Doesn't mean they arise naturally that way.
No, Legos don't. They don't reproduce, and they don't reproduce with variation,
Right.
and they're not
Right.
subject to principles of the centered modification.
Right. So Legos don't even
They've
come
written
close
programs.
to the ingenious design of living things. I agree.
But listen to this. They've written programs where Legos do build themselves and they reproduce inside the program and they actually evolve new forms.
No, what they did is they wrote an algorithm in there that's capable of assembling them in different ways so that you get different shapes that rise.
Right. Intelligent
That
origin
doesn't
is
have any
different from
bearing on
evolution.
what we observe to happen in living systems with genes. What's the scientific evidence that mutation builds anatomical features? You see, the
Just
simple
repeat the
answer
Lego
is
example.
you can't answer the question, so I'll answer it for you. There isn't any. That's just what you believe. That's your philosophy of evolution. That's not scientifically verified. That's your belief. I understand. Now, so I have
We
some
actually
questions for you.
do produce results in
So-
science. You don't.
Well, I mean, there's no results that show mutations build new anatomical features. That's for sure. There's no scientific results for that.
We've been over them.
Well, you haven't mentioned one. I've been asking for an hour. How many hours will it be before you can give me one?
The dog eyebrow muscles?
You don't know of one. No, I told you. You acknowledged that wolves already have these genes and produce and have these muscles.
Right. They have
Right.
muscle genes, so
Okay.
they can place a muscle in a new location.
Well, how do you know there's a new location? No, you acknowledge some wolves already have these.
And some don't.
And some don't. Okay, so phenotypic plasticity might be the explanation for that. That doesn't mean that it's been demonstrated that genetic information arose that created a new muscle in a dog's eyelid.
It's just a tweak of the already
So you say
muscle gene that it already has.
So you. Oh, thank you. It's already got the genetic information. Next.
Yes. Yep.
Phenotypic plasticity is not evolution.
Call it whatever you want.
Process now.
All right, I'll be right back.
Phenotypic plasticity is not evolution.
But it's part of evolution.
I understand you believe that, but you can't show that with science.
What do you mean? Okay, so when you said explain how these things happen, you want me to explain the exact mutations as how these things happen?
Well, I mean, a controlled example or something, but something scientific. I mean, you're claiming this is scientific. You're claiming science verifies these things, but we don't get verification of that from you guys. We just get you guys telling us what you believe, and then you're declaring it science, and then you're calling us ignorant for not believing it. We don't have any evidence for the things you say. These are your ideas in your head. That's why evolution is a philosophy. It's not science. See, it's none of it's observable, testable, and repeatable. You can't observe, test, or repeat evolution theory in any way.
Okay, so all the variation we see within the barons or kinds, I'm not too sure what you call them, is that all down to plasticity? Does mutation have any effect on the thing?
Plasticity is an organism has genetic information. It can express it more or express it less. That's not a mechanism for the creation of new genetic information that specifies a new structural design in the anatomy. That's are you trying to misrepresent phenotypic plasticity? Are you claiming that phenotypic plasticity goes all the way down to the point where it includes the rise of entire sets of genes that code for a new structural design? Is that what you're claiming? That phenotypic plasticity includes the origination of a new anatomical feature by new genetic information? Is that what you're claiming?
No, I'm actually asking you, what do you think that the changes you see within the Barrowmans is a result of? Is it a result of pure plasticity or expression?
Well, the changes that occur to living things are variation produced by variable expression of the organism's genome. And phenotypic plasticity can mean that a trait either appears or disappears in an organism because of its ability to variously express the information that exists already in its genome. Right?
Okay.
So now that information for that feature to arise in the organism's anatomy,
right.
it must have the information to make it. Now,
Right.
evolutionists are not able to provide a mechanism that creates that genetic information.
The genes come first in the expression. But
That's correct.
right. So that's how evolution works. Actually, the genes come first, and then the expression.
So what's the evidence that genetic mutations build new information that codes for new anatomical features?
Right. So you want something that codes for a new anatomical feature.
Well, that's what you're claiming happens. I'm not the one who makes that claim. See, the simplicity of this is that you can't provide a scientific evidence for what you're saying. I understand you guys believe that. You believe a philosophy, a chain of thinking. You believe a way of thinking about things. What the thing is, there's just not any scientific support for it. It's what you believe. I understand. It's a package of ideas. You will think, well, this makes that happen. And well, this obviously is why that happens. Well, those are your ideas. But that's not science.
What about
that's philosophy?
I'm trying to get around your argument because the thing is, I've shown you new anatomical features, but you
did? Where?
them as anatomical features.
Well, I don't remember you showing me any new anatomical feature. What are you talking about?
A tulip. A broccoli, a cauliflower, and so on.
No, that's not anatomical. That's morphological.
What about baleen? Whale baleen?
Whale baleen is an anatomical feature.
Is that an anatomical feature?
Yes, it is.
That's due to a mutation in the tooth gene.
It's expressed by genetic information during fetal development. There's sets of genes that make it. So where's the evidence that the genes that make the baleen in the whale's mouth arose by random mutation?
Because it's a piece of the tooth gene that creates these basically strands of tooth.
So it uses some of the same genetic information as what's used to make teeth.
Yes.
Okay, so what's the evidence that information arose when it didn't exist before?
Are you talking about the original teeth?
No, I mean, there's a sequence of genetic information in the human genome that creates 576 different proteins from one string of genetic information. Nobody argues that's because of overlapping and compressed information. Why should I think a whale's genetic genome is not compressed as well? You're not providing an argument here.
But that's precisely how evolution works.
No, what happens in your imagination is that whales didn't have baleen once.
Right, so what I'm trying to say is that traits are modified. They're not added as how you think they're added. They're always modified. Every single trait in a species is just...
Okay, so let's examine that idea. So if that's true for species Z, then species Y, had its anatomical features because it had the same genetic information. Let's start the other way. Let's start with species A. Species A has X amount of genetic information, it has X genes, right? Now, species B comes into existence with new anatomical features by recombining the genetic information that was in species A. Now, species C comes into existence, and it has also different genetic anatomical features, and it came into existence by recombining the information that was in species A. And species M comes into existence by recombining the genetic information that existed in species A. What you're positing is that the first creature had all the genetic information for all anatomical features of all living systems.
No.
That can't be true. If evolution were true, it would have to give rise to new genetic information continuously.
Right. Evolution can... I'm not too sure what I mean by new information, but talking about new genes and so on.
So,
and the expansion of the genome, yes, not necessarily, because again, organism complexity is not necessarily is not directly proportional to genome size.
So what I'm pointing out is that your argument that recombination is what does it is insufficient.
Well, not just
you still have to. If evolution were true, I understand that recombination would play a role if it were true. But that's nonetheless, evolution does still require that new genetic information arises, because recombining the existing genome of an organism is not going to give you the new information that makes new anatomical features. You're not going to get lungs in Ichthyostega by recombining the information in Eusthenopteron's genome. You're not going to get a land amphibian tetrapod's lungs by recombining the genetic information that makes gills and Eusthenopteron or Pandorixis. Okay? You understand me?
So Eusthenopteron and so on, in all these kinds of fish, they have a kind of float bladder that acts like a lung. So they actually had some proto-lung, to say.
Okay.
And that was then modified into lung. So it's just a modified version of something else.
Well, swim bladders exist. Even coelacanths have swim bladders. Okay, but you're telling me that recombining the genetic information that makes a swim bladder will create a lung.
Right. If you modify.
So what evidence is there in science that this kind of recombination creates new anatomical features?
I just gave you an example.
No, you gave me two creatures that exist in the fossil record, which are dramatically different. One is Ichthyostega, and the other is Eusthenopteron. What I need is a scientific explanation of how we have verified that recombining the information in Eusthenopteron was going to create the lung in Ichthyostega. Show with a modern example. Can you do that?
Yeah, we have several species that can absorb oxygen through their esophageal tissues, which is connected to the stomach. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted
Great. So creatures are designed to absorb oxygen. Interesting. So there is no scientific verification of your idea that recombination of genetic information will create a new anatomical feature. What's the evidence of that? You won't be able to cite me an example. It's what you believe, I understand. No, you gave me two creatures that exist in the fossil record, both of which are extinct. That's all.
I cited it in the chat.
The last example, brassica and so on.
What I'm sorry?
I'm talking about cabbages and kale and so on. I'm showing you how you can
cabbages and kale. Right. Those are not anatomical difference. That's morphological difference. That's how you shape the same tissues that exist in the creature and shape it. But that's not a new feature with a new function.
Different things. That's it.
No, that's not a new feature with a new function.
What?
I'm sorry. It's not a new feature.
Different folds is new feature.
So now you need a new function. Go ahead.
Changing the shape of the broccoli does not make it have new features. There's no example of a new structural design, a new anatomical feature with function arise in broccoli or cauliflower. Those are morphological changes. They can be more profound in plants than they can in animals, it seems.
That's already there. But every time.
That's your best example is a morphological change in broccoli? What about animals? Can you cite me any example in animals? Plants seem to be more plastic than animals, you know.
Right, in some cases they're more plastic. A new morphological feature in animals. Oh my gosh, I'm so.
No, not morphological feature. Anatomic, not a new morphology, a new anatomy.
Okay, so, you aware of the same lizards you and Jackson Lee were talking about?
Yes, the cecal valve, which is an enlargement of an already existing muscle in its gut.
That's it. So every new structure is a modification of an existing one. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, that's your philosophy.
No, that's just how.
But even in the lizards, that doesn't show a new anatomical feature. They already have the muscle. It just got larger and more pronounced.
That's how evolution works.
Well, then you're saying that every existing anatomical feature is comprised of the same tissues?
No, you can change cell type. You can change.
Now you've got to have cell specialization go on in the genome during fetal development, and that needs genetic information.
Not really. You can have.
Really.
Well, epigenetics can cause change in cell type.
So you're going deeper and deeper into your philosophy, but you're not citing an example of an anatomical feature arising And in the lizard, it already has the muscle. A bigger muscle is not a new anatomical feature. Okay.
That's how it works.
I can work out with weights. Well, that's your philosophy. I can work out with weights and get bigger muscles. That doesn't mean I have anatomically changed. I've changed morphologically, not anatomically.
That's how the structures begin. They begin by modifying what's already there.
Well, that's your philosophy. But you can't explain a new structural design, a new anatomical feature arising by modifying the shape of an existing one.
So what about the cecal valve? That doesn't count.
The cecal valve is a muscle in the gut of the lizard. It already had, and it got more profound, more pronounced, larger, and their stomachs elongated. They became a bit longer, and their jaws became a little wider.
Okay.
Right. So those are morphological changes, not anatomical.
Therefore, to go from an ape to a human, you don't need any new morphological.
That's not true. Humans and apes don't have the same number of bones.
What? Maybe bones? But there are different.
There's a different number of bones in the skull of a chimpanzee than a human being. There's a different. Chimpanzees have a bacula. Human beings don't have a bacula.
Well, that's human being. That would be a loss. Then you already accept losses. But the number of bones, I find this suspicious. Strange because you guys accept like time.
None of this is observable or testable or repeatable. This happens in your imagination.
Are you saying that the number of bones in an animal is impossible to change?
No, I'm saying that's an anatomical difference.
But it would be the same bone, right? Just another bone, as you said with the muscle in the lizard. It's just a muscle, another muscle doing.
No, a new bone would be new bone would be an anatomical feature, new anatomical feature. Enlarging an existing bone is a morphological change.
Oh, wonderful. So,
but humans can't be related to chimpanzees anyway because none of the recombination hotspot locations in their genomes align.
I love your example there because, for example, there are different breeds of pigs that have bred pigs to have more ribs to get more meat, and that's new bone, right? So that should satisfy the claim.
Okay, so so they've caused pigs to gain new bones, and so how is that going to help evolution theory that they got a new bone?
No, I'm not.
And how did the features of a pig arise? How did we get a pig by anatomical change? Try to explain.
That's a separate question. That's a separate question altogether. Remember,
what scientific evidence is there of that?
If I add a new bone, that would be a new morphological feature.
That's an anatomical feature.
We're able to breed pigs with more ribs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
More number of ribs. Okay. So that's a new bone. That's more bone. Satisfied your claim.
Okay.
The same thing happens with snakes and so on too, but I'm just doing it with pigs.
Okay. So you're telling the creature express a new homeobox gene that puts a new rib on it. Okay. So is this verification that ribs that firstly, is this verification that pigs have never had that many ribs in the past? Secondly, how does this help you with the idea that the pig itself came into existence when there was no pig, the scientific verification of that? Because even your example, getting more... Hold on.
That's a separate question too.
Hold on. Getting more of the same feature on the animal's anatomy won't ever give you a different kind of creature either. For example, take a fish. Adding more fins to the anatomy of a fish is never going to give you something non-fish. You understand? You're still going to have a fish. You can have a fish with 3 fins. A fish with 30 fins is still a fish. You're trying to say fish become amphibian tetrapods with legs, digits, and lungs, and completely different designed eyes, and walked around on land breathing with lungs on legs. See? You can't get that by adding fins. Nor can you get a pig by adding ribs. You need to build everything in the anatomy of the creature. We don't know of any mechanism for this, and you don't. And the new genes that created the extra rib in the pig We don't have any. There's not going to be any scientific evidence that those ribs genes arose. That's a varying expression of existing genes that already make ribs. They've been. It's a duplication of a homeobox gene, is what that is. So build a rib here. The gene, you duplicate the homeobox gene, and now you've got an extra homeobox gene that says put another rib in there.
And that gene is very plastic.
So you can't get a fish like this to become a land-dwelling creature with lungs by changing how many fins it's got. Neither do you get a pig by adding ribs. You understand?
What about fish that have feet that crawl on the bottom of the ocean?
They're in an interesting design. God made some pretty amazing creatures.
Were they original designs, or were they adapted?
Probably.
Which one?
Probably original creation. God has
How can you tell?
a tremendous. Well, I can't. Neither can you. But God has a tremendous imagination. But one thing we know is
it just looks like a modified fin.
So you think it evolved? Good. Now, what's the mechanism for that? We don't know of one.
It just has muscles in different places.
It has different anatomy than a typical fish.
Yeah, slightly.
Well, I think it's more than slight.
But slight changes add up.
Well, so you're welcome to believe that slight changes to genetic information create new anatomical features. What's the evidence of that?
We just went over that with the pigs.
No, you're talking about reproducing an existing anatomical feature. Human beings can be born with 6 fingers too, and that's typically not a good thing because the 6th finger is usually inept and not properly controllable by the human being's hand. But human beings can be born with 6 fingers. That's not evidence that human beings came into existence or human fingers came into existence by new genetic information arising because of mutation. That's just a duplication of a homeobox gene that says put another finger on there. You can't get a human being by adding fingers.
So just as the gene can duplicate the number that it produces, it can change the orientation, the length, the thickness, other features of the bone.
Yeah, now we're moving into your philosophy. It all changed so much that you get the human being out of something else. That's what you believe. But you can't even tell me about the mechanism.
Are those genes off limit for change?
You can't even show me the mechanism of duplicate genes creating new information that codes for new anatomical features. We don't have that documentation.
Here's a good illustration. If I hand you 2 Bibles, and I take one and I cut out little snippets of it, and I create a sentence out of it, and I cut out the rest, you still have that original Bible, but I've created a new sentence out of the second one.
Taylor,
you now have more information than what you started with.
Taylor, your philosophy is
that's just a demonstration of the concept.
It's one thing. I understand your concepts are not scientific evidence, Taylor. Do you understand that?
Just tell me how I'm wrong about that.
Taylor, my concept is
Tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, my concept is this.
How is that not new information?
Well, Taylor, here's my concept. See, my concept is that God did this, and there it was. See, hold on.
Yeah, magic, not helpful.
Your concept is that for what you just described. But here's my concept. There it was. See? Now, I can't scientifically verify that for you by showing you the mechanism for that. But what I can do is show you the overwhelming evidence that that's what happened. In fact, I have some very, very powerful evidence from genetics that that's exactly what happened. But you're not able to show me a mechanism which creates the new genetic information that codes for a new anatomical feature. No scientist has documented that. It's never been documented.
So tell me how I'm wrong with my analogy. How has that new sentence not added information?
Because firstly, this would be a scientific observation if it were true. We should scientifically observe new genetic information arising. Secondly, the fossil record... Hold on.
That's not what
Secondly, examining the history of living things on the earth in the past shows us it didn't happen because the fossil record shows that it is absent of the transitional forms that would have been there
No,
had evolution taken place. See, so we
Not
don't
what I
have a
asked.
record of
Nev,
it.
that's wrong.
And
Actually,
we don't know of no scientist has documented this occurring whereby new genetic information is created that codes for anatomical features. It's never been documented scientifically either. So when we look at the historical evidence for living things on the planet, and it shows us it didn't happen, and then we look at the scientific literature, and we find no scientist has documented this either in a genetics way. We just don't. We end up empty-handed. We don't have evidence for it. You believe it, maybe, but we don't have evidence of it.
So that doesn't answer the question.
I just did answer your question.
No, just tell me how I'm
quite
wrong about.
extensively.
Tell me
I
how I'm
explained to
wrong. How it's not a new sentence.
How
How
what
is
is
it
not a
not
new
adding
sentence?
to information?
What?
If I give you a Bible,
Mhm.
and I give you two Bibles, I take one of those Bibles and I cut it up, and I create a sentence that occurs nowhere else in the Bible just by
Mhm.
repasting and scrambling up the words. Then I give you back that sentence. Now you have a Bible, the original Bible, plus that sentence. That's new information.
Well, that
Where?
could be.
How am I wrong?
That could be. But now show us the Bible made that way. You're
Now
positing that the organism is made that way.
that's how duplication
You're-
mutations
Well,
work.
I understand your philosophy about it, but what we need is the evidence that that's taken place by comparing genomes, for example. Like
We've observed this happening.
For example, the Italian wall lizard, they could have easily sequenced the genome of the two populations. And what they would find, and what they did do, is sequence the mitochondrial DNA of them, and they found no difference. But they didn't sequence the genomic DNA. Okay, and the reason they won't do that is because they know when they do, they won't find a significant difference that we could point to and say, look, the genes that code for the cecal valve arose. They don't exist in this one because they'd find their genomes were identical. And there was no new genetic information. That's why they won't do that.
oh, Neff, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I'm just asking you if you would what really constitutes a new anatomical feature. So, is the transition from a lobe fin to a tetrapod limb, is that a new anatomical feature? Would that count?
That would be a change to anatomy. A limb instead of a lobe fin would be a change to anatomy.
That's it. Oh, that's it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That every new structure is just a modification.
That's what you believe. I understand that. We've been over this 1,000 times already.
Well, okay.
It's getting boring.
Right.
The simple thing is you can't provide evidence that your philosophy is science.
What would count as an example of a new feature on an organism?
What would count as? What would you believe is? Instead of being able to give the evidence for your belief, evolutionists do this all the time.
But I'm trying to tell you, what you're asking, it's a malformed question. If you're asking something that evolution doesn't do, then you're not asking for evidence of evolution.
And what you guys are actually doing is trying to say, can't you see it in your imagination? Look and
No, that's
see.
that's not what we're saying.
Just imagine. This is essentially what you're doing. You're swinging a pocket watch and expecting me to believe it. I am getting bored with this, really. I asked for the scientific evidence for your philosophy that random genetic mutation builds new genetic information that codes for new structural designs in the anatomy of creatures, and you guys can't put forth one. So you're trying to schmooze me with your philosophy. It's not going to work.
I would say what would make me happy is if you took a bunch of, let's say, cattle and you placed them in lakes and let them breed in water, and they could never leave the water, and they built these new anatomical features that would allow them to be much more sufficient for living in water. That would obviously make more sense since they're confined to that type of environment. I mean, take for example, we have cattle and we breed them specifically for weight. That's all we care about. How much they weigh and how good they taste. We would love if they could be like elephants. We don't really even care if they stay cows. It doesn't really matter. We'll eat anything. They could be gigantic and they should taste like bacon. But yet we can't get them to really much. I mean, they've got them as fat as they can.
Yeah.
And when they get too muscular, then they don't taste good.
Right, and they're unhealthy. Those gigantic blue cows that they've been mutants they've been making, incredibly muscular things, just profound. They look bizarre. They're such a freak-looking cow, and they're terribly unhealthy too. The animal is defunct. Its health is shot. So, if evolution were, why is it that anybody should believe that evolution is true after the discovery of DNA? I mean, we've discovered that DNA is a package of information that operates algorithmically. It's organized linguistically. Why are we to believe that undirected chemical interactions can produce information, algorithms, and linguistics? You've got to be able to answer that question if you think evolution is true. It has to have happened.
No, because
how is that possible?
Created DNA doesn't rule out evolution. That just rules out abiogenesis.
No, not because of because of the fact, Taylor, that it's information operating algorithmically and organized linguistically. That's the proof of creation.
Creation doesn't rule out evolution, though.
Well, creation, Taylor, that's a nonsense statement. If creation is true, evolution cannot be true.
No, that doesn't follow.
There's old Earth creation, is what I mean.
Right, and they're just as wrong as evolutionists. Any form of evolution cannot be true if life is defined by information, algorithms, and linguistics.
But that information changes.
If theistic evolution were true, the evidence in the fossil record would show transitional forms.
And it does.
No, it doesn't. We've been over that. So how can evolution be true by natural, undirected chemical processes? Since what creates a feature in a living thing is information that's organized linguistically, operates algorithmically. And let me give you something Let me give you something to really think about. Okay, really think about. The information in the DNA is overlapping and nested. Okay, that means let's imagine. Let me explain this to you. I want you to have a jaw-dropping, oh my God, how do I answer for evolution moment in your mind. Okay, so I'm going to share something with you that's going to give you one, whether you acknowledge it or not. Let me imagine that you have a sequence of information on the left. You got a strip of paper that's 5 inches long, and a strip of paper on the left that's right is 5 inches long. Now you overlap them. You lay one across the other so that there's digits on them. Okay, you align the digits, and what happens is now you take another strip of paper and it has digits on it, and you lay it across both of them where the joint is. So now you've got a third. Okay? So here's what happens is the digits on the digits in all three pieces of paper is shared as sequences of information in those three pieces of paper. I can read from that just the letters that are on sequence paper 1. I can read only the sequence of information on paper 2, but I can also read 3. And now if I want to, I can read part of 1 and over onto part of 3 and create my own fourth piece of paper. So the base point I'm making is any given base pair, any given nucleotide along the DNA molecule is likely shared by more than one sequence of information at the same time. Now here's the interesting thing where it gets even worse. There are codes written upon codes in the DNA molecule that share base pairs going down the length of the DNA, and if those codes tell the machinery of the cell how to express the information under them, using some of the same base pairs as the sequences. An example of this might be, let's say I'll use the Bible as an example. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was void and without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Okay? Now that's a sequence of information that we have. That's actually two. So we've got this sequence of information, but now I pick words out of that, and I write another sentence that says, darkness was upon. Or I pick one that says, in the beginning, darkness was upon the deep. See what I mean? Just picking certain words, I can create a sentence out of those by using some of those same ones. And now what happens if that information that I'm just created by plucking out certain words in that tells the reader of the book how to read the rest of the book. This is what we have in DNA. DNA, there are codes written on DNA over sequences that share some of the base pairs. Maybe the base pair number, this one, skip 5, and it uses that one. It uses the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, but then it skips 3, and it uses that one and that one. And it skips 20, and it uses this one and this one. And it skips 100, and uses that one. That one skips 2, uses that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Skips 10 and uses that one. Skips 20 and uses that one, that one, and that one.
Yeah,
You see what I
okay,
mean? All right, you understand what I'm saying? Now those base pairs, just those, all right, just those.
Listen for a while.
Create a code that say use the other bits that I'm also built of and do this with them. Okay. Now here's the problem for the idea of evolution building the genome by mutations and duplications. How in the world is it plausible to believe that you can get the regulatory information that shares the same base pairs with the DNA sequences that code for the proteins to be created at the same time? Because if you think that the genome was built by evolution first by just duplicating and adding raw information sequences, duplicating genes that are not yet part of anything, you're breaking the codes that tell the system how to use the codes below it. There is none. You've broken it. Or there is none there. Okay, so when evolution would have to be the magic of creation, in fact. If evolution were true, it would be creation, because it would mean that the building of the genome by mutation events would have had to have created the new sequences for proteins and whatnot in the genome, and at the same time built the codes upon them that share some of those same base pairs going down the length of it that tell the system how to use the codes for the proteins, and both are using the same bits of data. You can't imagine a process that can do this. Evolution is nonsense. It's impossible.
This sounds like irreducible complexity.
It is irreducible complexity.
Irreducible complexity. Okay.
So explain how that's logical. Can you give me a logical scenario whereby evolution could do this, continuously expand the genome with new codes for new proteins, and write the code that tells over the top of them, using some of the base pairs in those same codes for the proteins, how to utilize the protein codes underneath it? Can you explain how that's possible?
Okay, so off my head, I can't explain that for you now. I'm being honest, I can't explain that for you now. To refute those claims of irreducible complexity would take a lot of research, and most of the time they're fallacious, meaning that they look at the current state of a system.
Right, you just can't explain it. There's no way it can't be explained. Matt, were you about to say something? It's getting late, guys. I'm going to have to shut this show down. So,
right, what I was saying is that irreducible complexity is a description of the current state of a given biological system. Usually, what they do is to look at the system currently and try to remove a part and see if it will function. That's not how you test it.
Okay, so here comes your philosophy. It wasn't always irreducible in the past, right?
Right. Now you're getting
right, your philosophy.
Right, but it's not philosophy.